Present, asking to.
Yes, sir.
Now you can see, no?
Yes, sir, we can see.
Okay. So this is Professor Abdul Momin Chaudhary, our beloved Momin sir, and I'm sorry, I have got a little bit of technical glitch, I guess. Okay, is it visible? My slides? Yeah, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'd like to begin with some disclaimers. Usually when we talk about Buddhism and Buddhist monasteries of Bengal, even of South Asia, we tend to talk in a certain way. And taking a cue from the previous session, yesterday's session, I would like to point, or I would like to clarify that I am not a very keen fan of this text versus archaeology binary. Though I am relatively aware, or we are relatively aware of the fact that often some of the archaeologists or some of the Buddhologists or some of the scholars, they try to endorse this dichotomy or this binary in a manner that can hurt our interpretation, our understanding of Buddhism and its related material culture in Bengal. And throughout my presentation, I think I will raise more questions, or I will point out to our skepticism, point out to our different kinds of issues and limitations that we are facing, not only of understanding this religious tradition, which has been identified as Buddhism, but also several other aspects of understanding and knowledge, which are very popular in historical narratives of South Asia. Therefore, please be attentive to our questions and the issues we are facing in doing research in undivided Bengal, also in Bangladesh. And then I would like to express my gratitude, because this is today what I am going to show you. This is not only my work or our team's work. This also belongs to some of our friends and colleagues' work. They are from Government Department of Archaeology, Bangladesh, and I am specially thankful to them. Especially, I would like to mention two of my former students, Afroza Khan Mita and Saifur Rahman Pauline, who were kind enough to associate me with their research in southwestern part of Bangladesh. As well as I would like to thank Dr. Nahis Sultana. She has been a very good friend to me for a long time. And also Abid bin Kaisar, my former student, presently an officer in Department of Archaeology. Kabbu Kritika, Mahabubul Alam, he was a former assistant director of Department of Archaeology. Shohag Ali, Roysuku Furui. Whenever I have some issues or problems in understanding, I ask him, or I ask Dr. Rajat Shannal, who is present there. And also I am grateful to my friends, students, and team members. Now, taking a cue from the discussion yesterday, I would like to start with rather some kind of introspection as an archaeologist. For example, when we question text and try to portray archaeology as superior to text or archaeology as more objective than the text, then we have to think and rethink what kind of archaeology we are doing in Eastern India or in Bangladesh or in undivided Bengal. Especially the historians and scholars from other disciplines are, I am afraid, not very aware of some of the key conceptual and methodological issues of archaeology. For example, they consider archaeology as supplementary to historical narratives, or they try to use archaeological data to provide some kind of validation for their arguments without addressing the key conceptual issues, themes, or methodologies of archaeology. And of course, in history or in any historical discipline, space and time is a very important, two very important aspects in interrelated aspects.
So yes, moving.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Sir, your slide is not moving. We can hear you.
This is now moving?
No.
Okay, now?
No.
Okay, okay. Let me.
Yeah, now it's moving. Yeah, now it's moving.
Okay.
Sir, it's moving now.
Okay. I'm sorry for the trouble. So just give me 30 seconds to fix this. Whenever I am on the full screen mode, my slide stops.
So you can exit. So you can exit full screen mode and try.
Otherwise, ask him to go by next slide.
So you can go by next slide. Click on the slide.
Tell him.
Yeah. So he has this on Google or individually also. Yeah, I think that's why I mean. Sir, should we show your presentation here? Or
It was connected also.
so we can show your presentation here. You can say next slide and we move on to the next slide.
Now we can see.
Yes, sir. Please change your slide.
Now it is changing.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Now, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. So what I was talking about, the problem of archaeology as a discipline, as well as its relationship to other disciplines. So when we talk about, for example, Buddhist monasteries, because this entire seminar is on Buddhist monasticism and Buddhist monasteries. For example, in Bangladesh, we only refer to our celebrated sites like Shampur Mahavihara, or some of the recent scholars are giving emphasis to Lalmai Moinamoti region, which where there are several Buddhist monasteries, and this is basically uh, the trend of now the trend of interconnectivity of oceanic maritime trade network or maritime connectivity have gained impetus, some kind of centrality. That is why the Lalmai Moinamoti region have got prominence in many of the narratives of Buddhism and Buddhist archaeology. In a sense, we can call it big site centrism or monumental remain centrism, and at the same time, we um, just put emphasis on particular material culture very selectively, like Buddhist sculptures, like inscriptions, like seals and ceilings. As it was mentioned by Dr. Colin Lofroy yesterday, that material culture from the Buddhist monastic sites or from the excavations or archaeological surveying as important as the monumental remains, or as important as the architectural layout, as important as the artistic productions associated with the monastic remains. So therefore, we have certain kind of bias and certain kind of inclination towards the selection of the site, towards the selection of the narratives, and towards the selection of the concepts on which we want to work or on which we want to study. In my lecture, I would like to try to show that we can go beyond this biasness, and we have to go beyond this biasness if we want to understand Buddhist monasteries, monasticism on a holistic, historical, social, political, and religious context. That is why I will show that presence of material culture is equally important as the absence of material culture. Why there are absence and why there are presence? These are two important and related questions. At the same time, I must point out to some of the themes which are very important in archaeological research, especially in archaeological fieldwork, which are not considered in the established framework of knowledge. For example, we do not give centrality to archaeological context. We do not try to attend very sincerely to the understanding of archaeological stratigraphy. Still, we are relying more on some kind of Wheelerian Kenyanian method, where it is very difficult to understand the transformation of a Buddhist monastery or transformation of a monumental remains in different times of its life. At the same time, I will show that this Buddhist monastery or Buddhist monumental remains, which are identified as monastery, cannot be treated in isolation as isolated monumental remains. They were intimately connected to other aspects and other components of settlements. For example, yesterday it was mentioned by some of our learned colleagues about the Kuku Pushkurini Dighi, that is the artificial water bodies. And we have shown in our previous work and in our current research also that in the northern part of Bangladesh, in which we are working for a long time, ponds and tanks or artificial water bodies were key components of settlement pattern, settlement structure, as well as all these religious structure which we are getting, including Buddhist monasteries. Therefore, these concepts of archaeological stratigraphy, archaeological context, as well as the formation processes of archaeological record are very important for our understanding of any kind of Buddhist places, any kind of archaeological places, and any kind of places which are where we are not finding any detectable archaeological material. And now we are getting into our region, and you are well aware of our region of Bengal, undivided Bengal. And usually in historical discourse or historical narratives of South Asia, Bengal is treated as a frontier zone. You are all aware of the famous book by Richard Eaton. That's the where Bengal was treated as a frontier. And in fact, our archaeological standard and historical standards in some way are fixed by the Northern and Western Indian standards. At the same time, which was mentioned by Brajadulal Chattopadhyay several times, that this tension between center and margin is very difficult to deal with if we try to understand the complex processes of development of religious traditions, as well as the relationships of religious traditions with other aspects of human life. So Bengal in early medieval period, at least after 6th century, there were several sub-regions. Most of you are well aware of these sub-regions. I have just pointed out those sub-regions in the digital elevation model. Here it has been shown. And today, unfortunately, I will not be able to address the entire region, which is now the territory of Bangladesh. I have to exclude the Shamatata and Horikela region. And yesterday it was mentioned by some of our friends there. We have to address a northeastern part of India, Assam, Meghalaya, and the Sylhet region. But unfortunately, I cannot do that today. And also, I am not going to include the Lalmai Moinamoti region in my presentation. Rather, I will put emphasis on the northwestern part of Bangladesh here, and also to the southwestern part of Bangladesh, which is close to the Bay of Bengal, as well as which is known as the active part of the Ganges Brahmaputra Meghna Delta. Therefore, I will limit myself to the western part of the Brahmaputra Jamuna River. And here also, I am showing my area of focus today, where I will focus on this sub-region, which were known at least from the 9th century as Borenvi. And it was also known earlier as Gaur. Sometimes it was mentioned as Pundra. Sometimes administratively it was also identified as Pundrabardhan. And this territoriality continued to change because the sub-regional boundaries were not fixed, like the boundaries of nation states and administrative boundaries which we deal with today. And I will also focus on this Banga region, and I will exclude one part of the Banga region, which is very famous, and earlier many inscriptions were issued from that region, and it was known as the birthplace of Otish Dipankar Sridhan. and so many. That is Bikrampur region. So therefore, my presentation today will be some kind of partial presentation of some of the selective monastic establishment as well as monastic establishment related to the settlement pattern. And that is what I have already mentioned about our limitations of archaeology. If we try to self-critique ourselves without criticizing the textualists, without criticizing the historians, then first we have to deal with our limitations, our problems, and the work we have done. For example, if I try to understand the transformation of some of the famous and celebrated monastic establishments of early India, like Nalanda Mahavihara, then if I study the excavation reports published in from the beginning of the 20th century, then I cannot find answers to many of my questions on the basis of those excavation reports. The excavation method was, in a sense, very reductionist. The reports are not very detailed. It is very difficult to understand something beyond the structural remains, that is only the walls and monuments and monumental remains. In a sense, as an archaeologist or as archaeologists, we also deal with texts which were produced by the archaeologists from the beginning of the 20th century. It is also some kind of archival research that we have to do to understand or to address some of our questions. And also, which was mentioned by Dr. Colin yesterday, that in archaeology, we try to deal with periodization in a very different way. And in history, there are long-lasting debates on periodization. In archaeology also, this ancient, medieval, modern tripartite division is not considered as very helpful or useful these days. And in archaeological stratigraphy, when we periodize, then we periodize in a very different way. That is also very important to consider. And this is just some slide to show the way we deal with stratigraphy. We excavate our site. I am going to show some of our excavations, and this is how, from systemic context, something is something goes to the archaeological context. Then they change their context quite continuously. And if we do not consider this continuity and changes, then we can easily misinterpret some of the objects and also the monumental remains that we are dealing with. Now, I will start with definitely the celebrated site of Sompur Mahavihara, which is very well known, like Nalanda, like Bodhgaya, and many other sites which are considered as sacred, as the places of pilgrimage, and as very important to the followers of Buddhism. So this Sompur Mahavihara was excavated, as it was mentioned by Dr. Colin Doctor yesterday, but by K.N. Dikhi. And then after the liberation of Bangladesh in 1971, there were several scanty excavations, exploratory excavations, and it also intensified when this monastic complex was declared at the World Heritage Site. And in the name of the protection and preservation of these monuments, especially to deal with the waterlogging problem, Sompur Mahavihara, its courtyard, and the surrounding places were continuously modified to fix some of the problems. But unfortunately, those initiatives also destroyed the context of many archaeological remains and the stratigraphy of the places. Therefore, we try to understand Shompur Mahavihara not necessarily the way it has been looked at by the archaeologists, by the heritage practitioners, by the art historians, by the scholars from different disciplines. Probably Shompur Mahavihara is the most celebrated and most attended site in Bangladesh. Many scholars have worked on it from different aspects, from different perspectives. But the problem is that they have never considered Shompur Mahavihara beyond its monumental and artistic production limits. And we attempted to do that with the help of our friends and colleagues from Department of Archaeology. And we tried to understand, for example, the transformation of the monumental remains of Shompur Mahavihara. And we have already published several papers based on our understanding and study. And it has been, for example, it has been widely accepted that, like a grand narrative in South Asia these days, that all the Buddhist monuments or Buddhist monasteries were destroyed by the coming of the Turks and Afghans. I am identifying them as Turks and Afghans. Usually, the Muslims are blamed for the destruction of the Buddhist monasteries or Buddhist establishments. We have found ample reliable evidence that Shompur Mahavihara, partially or completely, were not abandoned in 13th century. That is, after the coming of the Ikhtiaruddin Muhammad bin Bukhtiyar Khilji. This is the first thing. Second thing is that Shompur Mahavihara or the establishment was attacked and destroyed at least twice before the 13th century. And there are evidence, epigraphic evidence, for example, like the Nalanda copper plate of Vipula Srimitra. And there are archaeological evidence. There are also different other stratigraphic evidence to suggest that Shompur Mahavihara, the people who were living in Shompur Mahavihara or using that space had to deal with not only the attacks or human anthropogenic activities or anthropogenic problems. They also had to deal with continuous floods and changing of the landscape. That is one of the key issues that we have dealt with in our studies. Shompur Mahavihara, the central shrine and the monastic wings were not the same earlier. It is established on some earlier remains. And yesterday it was shown by Colin, and now I will explain that Shompur Mahavihara went through different periods of changes according to our archaeological understanding as well as our analysis of the previous data. For example, we have analyzed and interpreted several periods which have been identified here as archaeological stratigraphy. So there were several phases of floods. At the same time, interestingly, like today, as we are dealing with waterlogging problem in Shompur Mahavihara, the early inhabitants or the shamanas or the bhikkhus of Shompur Mahavihara had to deal with the waterlogging, and they had to raise the surface level of the courtyard several times. So, and if we consider the landscape aspects of the Shompur Mahavihara, then we'll see that Sompur Mahavihara is situated in a very active floodplain. And it is just beside a river which is known as Choto Jamuna River. The river shifted its course several times. And Sompur Mahavihara had to deal with these changes as well as the flood associated with it. Interestingly, many of our colleagues and earlier scholars have interpreted that the earlier remains, monumental remains of Sompur Mahavihara was a Jaina monastery. They referred to Paharpur CPI of Buddhagupta and they have also not agreed about the interpretation of the CPI. Some of them as identified as a Buddhist Vihara, some of them as identified as a Jaina monastery. But still, the Paharpur copperplate inscription cannot be identified as belonging to the primary context of Sompur Mahavihara. That is another interesting and important thing. That according to our understanding and according to the stratigraphy of the Sompur Mahavihara, there is no archaeological evidence that can be dated to Gupta period, that is 5th century. Even the earlier habitational deposits were not contemporary to the 5th century or so. That started after 5th, 6th century. Therefore, we have to interpret the provenance of Paharpur copperplate inscription in a different way. For example, I have talked to Roysuku Fui about the mobility or transportability of copperplate inscriptions. And we have also talked about it in detail with Rajot at different moments of time. That copperplate inscriptions and their find spots needs to be correlated. As some kind of document of land grant, copperplate inscriptions could easily transport it from one place to another place, and they had particular significance to the early inhabitants or early owners of the land, or early owners or early inhabitants of some religious establishments to which the land or something was donated. So in that sense, Paharpur copperplate inscription has to be treated as in the secondary context. Second most, another important thing is that in Bangladesh and also in Bengal, any Buddhist monasteries are identified very easily as some kind of universities. And we assume that Buddhist monks lived in isolation there, they meditated, they attended or they concentrated only on the learning, only on the religious practices. And yesterday it was mentioned by several scholars that this notion of the Buddhist monasteries and Buddhist Shanghas are already being challenged by scholars from different disciplines. Sompur Mahavihara can present us with another evidence where we can find that these Buddhist monks or the Shramonas or the Shanghas were not only dealing with the flood management or the land management, they had also had to deal with the associated settlements which were located in the surrounding regions of Sompur Mahavihara. Unfortunately, Sompur Mahavihara has attracted so much attention that nobody has looked into the surroundings. Even after the decipherment of the Indian Museum copperplate inscription of Dharmapala, where it has been mentioned very clearly that one subordinate ruler called Bhadranaga applied to Dharmapala to allow him to construct a Buddhist Viharika close to Sompur Mahavihara. We haven't yet found that Viharika, but these are very important indicators or important data in support of the archaeological data that Sompur Mahavihara was not an isolated monumental remains. And in our archaeological survey, which we do in a very different way, we call it full coverage survey, but or total survey. We have detected many scatters of archaeological deposits on the surrounding lowlands and surrounding fields which are cultivated in different periods of time. Therefore, it is important that the entire Mahavihara, with a comparatively large space, had a hinterland zone on an active alluvial plain. The establishment was attacked and partially destroyed twice, at least twice, before the coming of the Turks. Okay. The gradual transformation of demography and spatial uses can be easily noticed if we consider the archaeological material in their context. And we have found evidence that partially Sompur Mahavihara was used till 15th, 16th century or later. And I have already mentioned the other points which are on these slides. Now I will come to another monastery that was shown by Dr. Colin Lofra yesterday. And I would like to point not necessarily to the findings of this monastery, but some of the interesting aspects of the material culture and the stratigraphy of these monasteries. And two of my former students are now officers of the Department of Archaeology, have conducted intensive survey around this Jagadal Mahavihara or Jagadal Vihara. There is debate regarding whether this Jagadal Vihara is the Vihara, Jagadal Mahavihara, which was mentioned by Sandhakanandi. So we do not have any kind of epigraphic material in support of the fact that this Jagadal monastery or small Vihara was Jagadal Mahavihara, which was mentioned in the mentioned by Sandhakanandi. And as well as we have to consider the fact that according to this survey, Afroza Khan Nita and Saifur Rahman Pauline has found more than 31 archaeological mounds in around Jagadal Mahavihara. Those mounds are partially destroyed. Some of them are not just suitable for excavation, but some of them are suitable for excavation. At the same time, you can see in the lower image that Jagadal Vihara and constellation of the cluster around Jagadal Vihara was also demarcated or surrounded by tanks, or that is, we call it in Bengali pukur, and in epigraphic record, you will find ample evidence of the Pushkurinis or Dirghika or something like that. And I must mention one point, that in Bengal, there is clear demarcation regarding the size of these water bodies, and on the basis of those sizes, the names are fixed. And like it was mentioned yesterday, all these ponds also have their own names, also have their own oral history, and which are definitely some kind of associated with some kind of supernatural activities. And I will show some of the sites around Jagadal Vihara. These are the sites which were identified by Nita and Pauline, that is Saifur Rahman. And you will see a different context and different kind of association of the archaeological material. And you can see on some sites, on some mounds, people are building their villages. There are some peaks by the local people, and walls are exposed. And this is, I think, a phenomena which are also very common in Bihar. As far as I have visited Bihar, this is also a very common phenomena of site destruction or site modification by the recent inhabitants. Now we come to the Bihara itself, and these photographs were taken by Paul as well as by Mahabubul Alam, and there were many remains of stones and pillars. And I must mention another point here in association with these stone artifacts, different kind of stone artifacts in Bangladesh. It is usually narrated or pointed at that most of our monuments were brick built, and bricks were the main or principal construction material, which is true, of course. But we have neglected the use of the stone on different purposes, not necessarily for carving sculptures or making idols, but also in the architectural construction, stone materials were used in a very different way. And we have found the reuse and use of these stones in many sites, not necessarily in the northern part of Bangladesh, but also in the southern part of Bangladesh. So this is a very interesting question, and I think we have neglected the provenance and the stages of manufacture and production of these stone artifacts in different kinds or different types, and especially we have neglected these stone materials, especially from this architectural construction use. Some of the scholars, for example, Dr. Gautam Sengupta has published on some stone identification of stones of stone sculptures. Frederick Asher have also worked on it. But it is not that the sample size were limited, and the technology that were used can be supplemented or can be also rethought in a different of ways. Therefore, we assume that these stone materials or the quarries of the stones were Chotanagpur Plateau, but Chotanagpur Plateau is a huge region. We don't know the quarry sites. We don't know from where these stones were collected, and we don't know the processes of production and how these were transported. And then these are some of the key transformative aspects of this monastery. For example, in the later period of the monasteries, post holes were used for the construction of the superstructures. Here you will find
Dr. Swadhin, actually we have our next lecture slated at 4:50. Can you please wind up in the next 10 minutes?
How much?
Next 10 minutes. You have 10 minutes to wind up.
Okay, thank you. How much time I have taken?
You have 10 minutes. You have taken over 45 minutes.
Okay, sorry. I have just skipped. I will just skip. Okay. Just I will show two slides. That is one. This particular slide. These bronze sculptures were found from a secret chamber of Jagaddal Mahavihara, and it was hidden. And at the same time, this stone sculpture, that is of Nairatma, was found to be reused on the wall of the staircase. So this interesting, we have another question regarding the destruction and abandonment of the Jagaddal monastery, that why during its use as a Buddhist monastery, these stone images and those bronze miniature sculptures were hidden or reused. That is very one of the questions. And we have found also, for example, the layers of ashes. Here you can see just on the floor of the monastery from the later period, and also a few glazed ware. And now I will go to one site that Colin mentioned, Dr. Colin mentioned yesterday, that is Vasu Bihar, close to Mahasthan. Here, there was also an earlier monastery, and according to Mahabubul Alam and Nahid Sultana, they have also found a thick layers of ashes on the floor of the earlier monastery. And they believe that the earlier monastery, which can be dated to the 6th, 7th century, possibly the monastery which were seen by Xuanzang, and they have found these door blocked and all the other things. And interestingly, and most importantly, Rajot was looking for this for a long time. They have found seals and sealings, and Dr. Nahid Sultana has included that seals, 2 seals, in her unpublished PhD thesis that she has done in our department, a Department of Archaeology, and it was deciphered by Roysuku Furui. And the Bihara was known as Shivapura Mahabihara, and another seal that belongs to earlier, where you can see the Chirapunja Bihara, a division of the illustrious Shivapura Mahabihara. So this is another interesting finding. And at the same time, I must mention, as I don't have much time, that around Mahasthangarh, the urban center or the fortified area, we are doing our recent surveying, and we have found that there were several monasteries, possibly more than 20 monasteries in that region. This is another monastery that we have excavated in Dinaspur region, north of Mahasthangarh, and we have followed Harris matrix method for this excavation. And here the periodization is like that. And we have also, with the help of my late co-supervisor of my doctoral thesis, Professor Jean-François Salle, we have been able to date some of the samples, and I have to exclude one date because it doesn't correlate with the context. And this Domail Buddhist monastery is a cluster of monastery, and it was abandoned, not necessarily by some kind of anthropogenic activity. It was abandoned because of the change of the river close to that monastery. And this is the settlement structure of that monastery. And this is another site that we have excavated. It's a stupa. And here also we have found that several, we have composite plans of those stupas. And we have found that this stupa was continuously used till 15th, 16th century. And it was transformed from a Buddhist stupa, possibly to a Brahmanical edifice in the later period. So, and it is associated with another monastery, which is not excavated completely. Exploratory excavation suggested that it is a Buddhist monastery, and it is not very close to that Buddhist monastery. This is Chitakot Vihara. You have seen yesterday by Colin. One important findings is that there was a terracotta fish found from this monastery. And this observation by the excavators are very important. The paucity of antiquities from the site and comparative absence of accumulation of occupation debris and cultural materials, together with the absence of any signs of devastation in the later phases of its occupation, clearly indicates that this large establishment was abandoned normally and gradually after only 2 periods of occupation, and probably quite some time before its final collapse. So this is a very important interpretation. And on the right side of the map, you can see a zone where we have found several monasteries. Chitakot is here. In Novatgons, there is monastery. In Domail, there are a cluster of monasteries. And this is Orundhap, another monastery, which was excavated by the Department of Archaeology. but the report is not has not been published, and it is also associated with several smaller mounds. We have excavated one small mound, and we have found a small temple, Brahmanical temple there. And this monastery also went through changes and these uses of the changes. So I will go to a few sites. For example, in Parbatipur, north of this area, there was a monastery which has been completely destroyed. We are associated with the ponds. And there is another interesting monastery in Chaprakot, in Bodhgaya of Rangpur. You can see the just layout of the monastery. From here, an inscription, stone slab inscription was found, and Roysuku Furui has re-edited the inscription, and it was found that there was a Buddhist monastery which was constructed by one subordinate ruler named Kollan Bardhana during the reign of Gopala, 4th Gopala, 9th year. But the monastery was constructed by Kollan Bardhana, and the inscription was issued to commemorate the construction of a gate by the elder monk of that monastery. And it was constructed during the reign of Bikram Bardhana. And now I will go, I am sorry, this is a site that we have also excavated in the northern part. This is a completely isolated site in Bochaganj, and it was transformed from a Buddhist site to a Brahmanical one. And I will skip to another such site where we will also find that a Buddhist site was just transformed from Buddhist edifice to Brahmanical edifice. On the southern part, yesterday Rajyoto was mentioning Jhurijhara Mound, and we are very confused about the architectural plan of this mound. And this is the deltic part, and all these sites belong to the deltic site. And this is Kopil Muni, another Buddhist small shrine that was excavated by the Regional Directorate of Archaeology there. And there was a large number of cowries which was found from that settlement. And this is another very interesting Buddhist monastery which was excavated by the Department of Archaeology in Dalijhara. You can see the layout of the monastery, and you can see the two shrines associated with the monastery. These shrines are also in the same architectural layout like Jhurijhara Mound. We have found carbonized rice grain associated with this Dalijhara monastery. I am not going into the detail here. Here is the monastery, and okay. This is the Jhurijhara monastery temple's layout, and also like some sites in North Bengal, we have also identified, like it was identified in Mahasthan also, there's the effect of the earthquake on the monumental remains. And the effect of the earthquake was so massive that it just changed the layout of the site and possibly the transformation of the establishment. And I will show the last one. This is another Domdom Pirosthan Dhibi. These are the settlements or sites which have been identified by our work as well as Government Department of Archaeology's work. And in contrast to the established understanding that in the delta part only medieval period sites were present, we are finding many sites and settlements which were very important, as well as which belong to both Buddhist tradition and Brahmanical tradition. So I will conclude by pointing out or summarizing some of the key aspects of my presentation, that Buddhist monasteries, including or Brahmonical, whatever way you identify it, this identification can be very misleading, because according to the stratigraphic transformation, one Brahmonical site, one Buddhist site can be transformed into a Brahmonical one, as well as through transformation that can be used for completely secular purpose in the later phase of their biography. So what would be the identification of a Buddhist site or of a Brahmonical site? The earliest one will be the authentic one, or we have to, whether we should consider the entire biography or the use of the site. Second thing is that Buddhist monasteries were part and parcel of the settlement that was developed or that just exploded in the northwestern part of Bangladesh and southern part of Bangladesh during early medieval period. That is after 6th, 7th, 8th century. Buddhist monasteries, Brahmonical temples were the hub on the basis of which the settlement pattern or settlement structure developed. At the same time, we shouldn't homogenize or simplify all the Buddhist monasteries and their developments or so-called decline in a similar way for a big region like Bengal. There were sub-regional varieties and there was micro-scale variabilities of Buddhist monasteries, their layouts and their lifestyles. At the same time, we must address some of the disciplines like landscapes and paleobotanical aspects to understand the relationship of Buddhist monasteries with the laities as well as with the settlements, which can be broadly divided not only into the religious edifices, but also with the agricultural land and also with the pastoral land. So this is the way I try to present myself. I apologize for taking more time. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thanks a lot indeed, Dr. Sen. Because of some technical hiccups in the beginning, we lost some precious time. But your presentation was very comprehensive, which really did very correctly cautioning the archaeologists to how to use the source material and how to not discriminate against the smaller objects. It's very important methodological point that you have spelled out. I really wish that you would have really some more time to go through your presentation fully. But since our next speaker is waiting, so we don't have much time for question answer. If anybody has question, I think we can allow at least maximum 2 questions. If one can quickly go through questions, then we will have that. Otherwise, we will go to the next presentation. It appears that the slides have to be really sped through. So okay. So thanks a lot, Dr. Sen, for your very comprehensive and very insightful presentation. Thank you very much indeed. I'm very grateful.
Thank you.
And I will also hurry through my remarks, because I just made one point that is coming to my mind, that since yesterday morning session, we have covered a whole lot of region, Eastern Bihar and Southeastern, Eastern India, Southeastern India. Then in the morning session, we were discussing Sri Lanka, then Nepal, and then Bangladesh. And this is a tribute to this religion of Buddhism, which was such a pan-Asian religion in very short span of time. And I'm very convinced now that this kind of exercise has to be done again and again, because without really deliberating on the problem of Buddhist monasteries and stupas and other archaeological issues in a holistic manner, we cannot really deal with this subject rigorously and honestly. I mean, lots of insights do come through when we look at the problem holistically. And I think it is in fitness of things that starting from Nalanda, in the modern system study, we are also concluding our deliberations with Nalanda Mahavihar. And for presiding over the session, I will request our young friend, Dr. Sanyan, to come forward. In fact, and I welcome Dr. Abhishek Singh Amar, who is in the faculty of Hamilton College in New York State. And Abhishek, I really welcome you very heartily to this session. And I will just hand over the mic to Rajat to conduct the proceedings. He was saying that I'm a young person, how can I preside? I said, people like only young people should preside and not old people like us, you know. So Rajat, can you please?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. And we are on the last lap of the program that was initiated yesterday, and we had several interesting sessions covering our wide geographical span, as sir said. And now it's my duty to preside. And when I said that I should not chair since I'm young, I meant my hairs are not yet white. Otherwise, in terms of age, I'm not that young as I